will have a review of landing pages as well as the compliance, regulations, and laws around them. Additionally, we will have a discussion of online brand and advertiser expectations and tips on how to build compliant landing pages that still convert. Thank you for attending. Please feel free to ask any questions to our very knowledgeable panel. Just as an opening note, I'd like to formally introduce everybody that is on our panel today. I'll be your moderator. My name is Amber Paul. I currently serve as the Vice President of Business Development for GlobalWide Media and Neverblue Media. We have the very lovely Sarah DeDiego, attorney at law and founder of DeDiego Law. We have Aaron Kelly, who is also an attorney at law and partner of Kelly Warner, PLLC. We have CJ Montgomery, attorney at law and partner of Wheeler, Montgomery, Slate and Boyd, PLLC. And last but not least, we have Blaine LaBron from One Technologies, who currently serves as their Director of Strategic Accounts. And we'll begin. Now, the first slide that we have here and first question to our panel, can each one of you give us a background on yourself and how you work around compliance on a daily basis?
Why, certainly, Amber. A little background on myself. I obviously am an attorney, and I represent mainly email affiliates. I've been doing this since 2006. I love it. It's a great industry. Compliance is all I do all day long, from checking to see in contracts what the advertiser expects of the affiliates, to making sure that affiliates are being compliant, to checking advertisements. I spend a lot of my day looking at and checking each advertisement that comes across, making sure that the ad copy is compliant, that there's nothing that shouldn't be, that from lines, subject lines, that all the necessary things are in there. Also checking the landing pages for appropriate disclosures, making sure that everything is clearly and conspicuously displayed that's important. So compliance really is the backbone of online advertising, because everything that we do centers around whether or not your ad is compliant.
Thanks, Sarah. My name is Aaron Kelly. I'm a partner at Kelly Warner. My primary area of focus is on transactional and then compliance. My firm mostly handles defamation litigation, but my practice areas are compliance review and then transactional. Most of the time I work with a lot of networks, affiliates, advertisers. It's a lot of day-to-day work with just exchanging emails and just working really closely with them and their affiliate managers and making sure all their ads are compliant.
My name is CJ Montgomery. I handle all of the online practice areas for my firm. I'm a partner in a firm in Washington. Most of my compliance stuff consists of reviewing things up front for clients that are concerned or have had previous issues with regulatory government bodies in the past. My clients vary from networks to medium and even large size affiliates. Most of them are in the diet and nutri space.
Blaine LaBron, and I'm the Director of Affiliates Marketing at FreeScore 360, so one of the largest direct-to-consumer credit monitoring products. Obviously, we're very highly regulated, and with such a large offer, literally my entire day is almost spent on compliance, reviewing creatives and talking with affiliates and all of our partners and our internal legal counsels to decide, what is okay and what is not okay, and what is compliant, what isn't compliant, so on and so forth. Kind of going through the gray area of compliance and trying to figure out what the best way to market is.
Thank you, panelists. Sarah, would you like to start us off and clearly define exactly what it is that the FTC governs and what they have role over? Some of our audience members may not be as familiar.
Sure. The FTC, which is the Federal Trade Commission, governs online advertising through truth in advertising rules. So under the Federal Trade Commission Act up here, there's a few things that the FTC requires of your ads. Advertising must be truthful and non-deceptive. Advertisers must have evidence to back up their claims, and advertisements cannot be unfair. These are the three main things that the FTC looks at. Going on what makes an advertisement deceptive. According to the FTC's policy statement on deception, an ad is deceptive if it contains a statement or admits information that is likely to mislead consumers that are acting reasonably under the circumstances and is material. That is, it's important to a consumer's decision to buy or use the product. So what the FTC is looking at is on your landing pages, in your ad creatives, what they're looking at is to see if you have provided all the necessary information. So if you're selling a product that costs $9.99, but there's $19.99 in shipping and handling fees, and you don't disclose that, they would consider that deceptive. And they will talk more about exactly how they consider deceptive and where they want the disclosures. But these are the main things that the FTC is looking at. Where they want the consumer who's looking at your ad, what they call a reasonable consumer. So that's the average person on the street, not necessarily someone who's in advertising knows what to look like, but a reasonable consumer. They want them to be able to look at your landing page and know what it is that they're getting into. If you're selling them a product, you shouldn't be making claims that are deceptive, saying things about your product that aren't actually true. And they look at it from a consumer who's maybe not necessarily the brightest or the smartest consumer. They're looking at just the average consumer. Next one. Thank you. Like I said, the FTC looks at ads from the point of the view of the reasonable consumer. The FTC also looks at both express and implied claims. So if you expressly state that your product costs a certain amount, that's an express claim. An implied claim is when you say, oh, that you're going to lose tons of weight, or you're making claims without actually expressly stating it. And the FTC looks at both of those, not just the claims that you actually say, but the things that you admit. And that would be the next one. The FTC looks at what the ad does not say. So if you're leaving out important information from your ad, they look at that as well. They also look at whether whatever you're claiming is material. So when the consumer is deciding whether or not to buy your product or your service, are you leaving out something that is material to their decision? Or have you stated something that's material to the decision? If you've said that your product, if taking your product, they'll lose a pound a day, that would be a material claim, because that's going to impact their decision on whether or not to buy your product. And finally, the FTC looks at whether the advertiser has sufficient evidence to support the claims in the ad. So going back to that example, if your ad says that your diet product, you can lose 1 pound a day, do you actually have studies to back that up? Do you have proof of that? The FTC does require you to actually have proof.
Sarah, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on this slide for us and kind of let us know what's wrong and what is acceptable on this slide?
I think actually, Blaine, do you want to take this one?
Blaine, you want to take this one?
I'll take this one. So this is clearly one of mine. So a lot of what I work with affiliates on a daily basis is basically the way that they are implying a product or service within their marketing. So one of the big key things here, I mean, a lot of this is not okay, but a lot of key things we look at is terms like warning are used frequently in marketing, and that could be from line, subject lines, and also landing page creatives as well. So one of the things we look for is, is a certain ad or advertisement or email creative, providing a false sense of urgency to the customer. This one also deceptive because it looks like it's a Facebook, something that popped out of Facebook. You have a message, and also it's advertising that you're going to get a free gift card, which it never did. But so this is a clear bad creative for us, but the main thing here would be like warning and using kind of those false sense of urgency claims.
Hey Blaine, really quick, can you explain some of the FTC scrutiny that a large company and brand like yours undergoes when a publisher uses a page like this to promote your product?
Yeah, so ScoreSense is like now one of the largest direct-to-consumer credit monitoring products. Like I said before, we're very highly regulated. We actually interface directly with a lot of the regulatory bureaus to see, is what we are approving compliant and also truthful and so on and so forth. So, we're constantly working on that. And as a brand and a large brand, we have to be really proactive in that. So it's just really important to constantly be on the right side of everything. We don't really want to ever toe the line, and we want to be as truthful as possible in all the marketing that we do and that we approve. So go back to that other one. Yeah. So again, we have like attention Amazon.com visitor. This is popping over Amazon.com. A lot of the problem is, and we didn't get the call notes in here, but when you look at our call center and what customers say about our product, obviously we have a negative option product, 7-day free trial. But a lot of people that are signed up for our product that don't necessarily understand how they came in, especially when you have an ad like this. So they really think like, oh, Amazon.com, sent me to a credit monitoring product, and they almost think that Amazon is actually sponsoring our product, which is not the case. So we don't allow words like visitor on landing pages because it gives a false representation that the brand that is being popped over is actually related to our product when it is not. And consumers do not understand that usually. And then here's like an email creative as well. So like using like creative that says, to appeal your credit score, you need to go to the site. So people think that a lot of like going to our product ends up, that they have to in order to appeal like a credit score decrease. But you can never actually know that they actually had a credit score decrease, so there would be no reason to use this creative. It's clearly not compliant, but they also use a false sense of urgency here as well, saying that it has to cost you. It'll cost you if you don't act today. And then finally, pretending that you are some kind of verification department or something like that. A lot of consumers see this as almost like the bureaus are sending them an email creative, and they don't really understand that it's like an actual email marketer, and so they actually purchase our product based on that. So this is clearly not a compliant creative, but you don't ever want to make misrepresentations of who you are or why the consumer should use a product or service you're promoting.
Blaine, is there a certain amount of revenue that advertisers are willing to sort of turn the blind eye when it comes to compliance?
I can't speak for every advertiser out there. However, when you're a large brand like us, we are very risk adverse for all the right reasons, because we clearly want to be an offer that promotes, that will continue for years to come. So in order to do that, there's really no amount of revenue that we would have or that we could be making on a non-compliant creative that we would ever allow.
Okay, well, we've touched on continuity a lot, but since we have each of you on the panel, would any of you be able to give us an example of a case in which a large non-continuity brand was fined by the FTC for false advertising, and perhaps give some steps on how that could have been prevented?
A large brand? I think, let's see, in the last month we've had a case against Reebok or Skechers for, I don't remember the number, but millions and millions of dollars that they were basically telling people, you've seen their curved shoes that are supposed to make you
I bought them.
Yeah,
They didn't
Sarah
work.
probably has a pair.
They were really uncomfortable.
They've sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of them, but it's clear from the FTC's reaction to it that even a big brand like them is going to be treated just as a smaller brand would. If they feel that you've crossed the line, they're going to do something about it. And I'd have to look up the amount that they paid in fines, but it was in the tens of millions of dollars.
But Kim Kardashian endorsed them. Doesn't that make
There
it
you
acceptable?
go. That by itself should have given them a pass.
And what the FTC does, like with a fine like that, is they take it and they send it back to consumers. So they actually send out a notice to everybody who bought them. I don't have them anymore because they're crap and I threw them away. But I got a notice in the mail saying if I wanted to submit my receipt, I would get like $50, something back from the FTC. I unfortunately don't have the receipt anymore, so I don't get my $50. But that's what the FTC does when they do these settlements. They get the money from the advertiser or from the marketer, and then they go out and they try to give it back to the consumer. So the FTC's, what their role is to protect the consumer. They're a consumer protection agency. So when they recover money through these fines, through lawsuits, what they do is they actually give that money back to the consumers. They don't keep it for themselves.
Mostly.
Mostly.
They try to give it back to the consumers. And it looks like Aaron just pulled up, it was a $25 million fine, so that's a fairly serious slap on the wrist. Now, certainly Reebok probably made many times that, but to be slapped with something like that and have all of your ads receive increased scrutiny in the future, no large brand wants that, and certainly a smaller brand probably wouldn't survive.
CJ, while you're still speaking, you want to start going over the mobile standards?
Mobile standard deceptive. So this is something that's kind of become a bigger deal in the last 4 or 5 years. And what's important to realize is that you could take every step possible to make a perfectly compliant landing page and have everything clearly disclosed and easy to see. And on a giant screen sitting on your desktop, that works fine. But unfortunately, something that's considered non-deceptive on a desktop could be considered deceptive on mobile. And largely this has to do with where terms and conditions and stuff are put. You're working with a very small screen when it comes to mobile. So something that's optimized for a full-size browser, tends to look very different on an iPad or your cell phone. And I've had clients that say, you know, you've reviewed my landing pages before and this is great, and we just got into mobile, and good news, we're converting even better and it's great. And then you go and look, and the reason is there great terms and conditions that were clearly disclosed on their desktop app. You can't see it all on mobile. So the FTC is considering this a big issue. They're saying even marketers that have made a good faith effort and have something that looks compliant in one medium, if you're running most of your ads on mobile or iPad or Kindles and stuff, and that's where you're getting your conversions, and it's because people don't see the same thing, it's become a problem for them. FTC released their .com disclosures, and basically what those say is if a disclosure is required and it cannot be made in a clear and conspicuous fashion, the advertisement should not be disseminated. So their statement is that you can't really offset this on mobile by saying, well, if they went to our desktop app, they could see the free trial terms and conditions, or they could see the user agreement. So as long as we have a way for them to do it, that's fine, right? Unfortunately, it's not, and the FTC's taken a pretty harsh stand, especially as mobile's gotten so much bigger in the last 3 or 4 years. When users have to scroll to see a disclosure, the FTC recommends that the advertiser use text or visual cues to alert the reader to scroll. So that's basically letting them know, hey, there's more on this page you need to know. You have to be able to see it. And in these days, a lot of people use what's called responsive checkouts. They're designed to appear properly in mobile. But as anybody who's tried to read a news article or a story on their phone can attest, you do a lot more scrolling when you're working on an iPhone versus your desktop. So right now, the FTC is saying you have to basically make changes to that so that people are alerted to the fact there's something further down the page or there's something more they should be seeing.
All right. Going on the topic of clear and conspicuous disclosures, this actually is from an FTC publication about negative options, and we have a few more slides from it as well. It's a great publication to read because they go on for about 100 pages on what they expect from you when you're putting up your disclosures. And here's some of the things that they look for or what they think is important. Your disclosures need to be prominent. Size matters. The color and the graphics can help. So having your disclosures in a bright font or set off like that in, fancy little graphics, they look for things like that. As CJ was just saying, you have to be careful about the screen size. What type of operating system or browser are they viewing the ad on? Got the next one. You also can use text to prompt consumers. Like they were saying, scroll down to see disclosures, or important terms are here, this is important. Making it clear. A lot of times what we see is ads where the important parts, like how much you're going to be charged, you're signing up today for a free trial, but if you don't cancel within 14 days, then you're going to be charged $49.95 a month for the rest of your life. And that will be somewhere down at the bottom, below the fold of the page, in tiny gray font that nobody's ever going to read. That's not okay. Those are specific. That's the kind of thing that the FTC is looking for. Avoiding pre-checked boxes. So a lot of times you'll see that the box is already checked, I agree to the terms. The FTC doesn't like that. They want the consumer to actually look at the terms and check the box. Hyperlinks. If you're putting hyperlinks and you're just saying, like here they say, don't be coy. Using ones like more info, legal, or disclosures is not enough. You need to make your hyperlinks very clear what it is you're hyperlinking to. So if it's what the total cost of the product is going to be, that needs to be very, very clear. If there's special terms, like it's going to be a rebill, they're going to be charged for the rest of their life, you need to make sure that they're actually looking at those terms, not just hiding it somewhere on page 6 in a hyperlink that says privacy policy or terms, and they're never going to look at it. And then also they want to know if your consumers are actually clicking on your terms. So you know, if you have terms there, but nobody's actually clicking on it, that's not good enough for the FTC. You're not doing something right if no one's actually checking out the terms before they buy the offer.
Okay, we're going to go to our next slide. And Aaron, I'm actually going to have you take this one over, but I have one quick question for you before we get into this one. A lot of affiliates believe that they're fully protected by the affiliate networks that they're running with. Would you say that this is the case, even though they're being provided certain content by advertisers and affiliate networks?
No, not at all. We've seen actions against affiliates, networks, advertisers. The one that I can remember, the last one, they went after, I think, 5 or 6 big acai affiliates, and they got the information from the networks, which they got from the advertisers. So they go down the line, and the affiliate is going to be just as liable as the advertiser and the network. In fact, most of the contracts are going to say, the network contract is going to say they have no liability whatsoever, and it's kind of just passing the buck. It's pointing both ways. We'll go after the advertiser or go after the affiliate. And at the end of the day, everybody's really going to be held liable. It just depends on who's coming after you at the end of the day.
Okay, so can you give us an example of the slide right now? What would be considered compliant and what wouldn't be of this current slide and advertorial that we have available? Sure,
this is where the fun starts for me. This is probably the best part of my job because I get to, I'm pretty brutal when it comes to compliance reviews. I like to beat up, the page a little bit and then at the very end say, this is what, you can do. Let's talk on the phone about how we can make this compliant or what changes I think you should make. At the end of the day, it's important to think about not just about legal compliance, but legal compliance that can convert. With this site, though, I get asked 1,000 times a week, can I use the term women's health, in my advertorial? The question is, or really the answer is, depends on the context of it. Are you using it, in just a sentence? Or are you putting it like here at the very top, where it looks like you're at Women's Health Magazine's website, which you're not. This is just a pre-sale page for I think a 2-step, a ketone, and then I can't remember what other product it was on there. But with this site, the first thing I go to again is the term women's health, and then the magazine. There's trademark violations there to start off with. That's probably the biggest thing. That's what's going to get them in trouble initially, is women's health coming after them. The second thing is the implied claims. You're looking at a site that is probably written by, or they claim it's been written by a woman, but you've got pictures here of women, bikinis and women that look really thin, and it's implying that if you do what they're saying that they're doing in this blog, that you will look like that, which most of the time isn't going to happen. So the first thing I would say is that the implied claim would be if you take the product that they're selling, you're going to look like these 2 women. If these are stock photos, and I'm sure these women haven't taken the product that they're talking about, the implied claim, again, would be if you take the product, you're going to look like that, but it's not true. So they should put stock photo or something underneath the photos, and they would have to get rid of the picture of Women's Health Magazine. Any other photos on the page should say stock photo if it's a stock photo, unless you really did go out and take pictures of actual users. Going on, the claim about losing 18 pounds, I hate using specific claims, just express claims like, if you take this, you'll lose 18 pounds in a week. Well, you have to have studies done. The FTC's hammered that home, especially against networks, to say that they have to have at least 2 clinical two trials for each diet offer, and that's just not the case with a lot of these products. The other thing I would probably point out are the videos. A lot of guys are using, Dr. Oz videos talking about the product, and they're putting it on their site. And Dr. Oz and a lot of these videos, they're not ever addressing that specific product that they're selling on the site. So unless they're addressing your specific product, I probably wouldn't use the video.
How about the countdown timer right above Women's Health that has about 60 minutes starting?
The biggest thing I see, a lot of guys are using that to really put a sense of urgency in the consumer's mind, like, oh, I have to act fast or they're going to run out. Well, it's just not the case. I'm sure if customer number 201 came to the website, you'd still sell them that free trial bottle. So at the end of the day, you can come up with ways though to give that sense of urgency, but they still have to be true. I mean, it's why I rarely ever say only 200 or 1,000 trials available. You can say limited supplies. I mean, that's true because once you're out of your first batch, you have to order more. So I would be very careful when you're, putting in specific numbers like that.
Okay, let's move on to our next slide and our next example.
Let me go down here. So with this one, again, we're showing, if my computer works, we're showing, before, I guess this is like a example of two people that have supposedly taken this product, which again, we don't know if that's true. We don't know if these are real testimonials or if these are actual, real users of the product. So at the end of the day, it's important to use, real testimonials. And if you do have testimonials from people, I don't always use their real name. You can give them an alias, but you can just say that they're real users and have an affidavit from them saying that everything they've said is true, that they actually took the product. Don't come up with your own testimonials. Don't write your own, or just use something fake, because at the end of the day, you're going to be held liable for that.
It's important to know on the testimonials, even if you have a legitimate testimonial, it was your brother or sister-in-law or someone that took and they said, yeah, I wrote it out, I lost 20 pounds. You can't use a testimonial to say something you couldn't otherwise say. So if you start saying, if somebody says, hey, I lost 20 pounds in a week, they may have lost 20 pounds in a week. Maybe they had surgery, maybe they were deathly ill, whatever. But even if that was true, even if they really did take the product, even if they did lose 20 pounds in a week, you've got two problems right there. One, there's an implication that anyone else who takes it would lose 20 pounds. Two, the FTC has basically said any product out there that's saying you're going to lose more than 2 pounds in a week without a lifestyle change is going to be red flag, no matter what it is. It's just not feasible to medical science that you're going to lose that much. So don't ever think that just getting someone to write a testimonial and sign an affidavit is going to allow you to make claims you couldn't otherwise make.
Exactly.
Now we're at the bottom of our advertorial page, and this is a big area of controversy and confusion for a lot of advertisers and affiliates alike, and this would be the blog and commentary section on the advertorial. What are the guidelines that go around this? How can we prove that these are real users posting real comments?
Well, most of the time they're not. I mean, that's just the case. Out of all the ones I've ever seen, I think I've only seen maybe one or two where there's actually been real comments from people. And what it comes down to, it really is what they're saying. I mean, if you're posting in there, oh, I just ordered the product, I'm going to try it and let you know how it goes, and then later on somebody says, I tried it and I lost 30 pounds this week. Again, that's deceptive. You are having your friends write it, or you're writing it. If they're real comments, you should verify them. You can use Discuss or Facebook or something else to verify the comments, but at the end of the day, it all depends on what they're saying, though, too. So it's something where I tell my clients, yeah, you can have these comment things at the bottom, because people look at that and they think, oh, other real people are trying this just like me. They've had success with it, I'll have success with it too. If they're not real people, again, it's deceptive, and you're going to get hit for that.
Does the actual submit button need to work on the page, or can you have a little asterisk at the bottom that says that the session has been closed by the moderator and that you can no longer comment on the blog?
Depends on what you're doing with it. I mean, if you are trying to solicit real comments from people, you can have the submit button there, but you can, again, if you already have comments from people that are real, you can post them and then close it for further comments. But again, it goes to whether or not the comments on there are real or not.
And nothing requires you to actually post or allow through moderation the comments that people put. So just from a tactical point of view, it's probably worth having a submit button to work. You don't have to do anything with the comments that come, but it certainly looks better, and it's certainly, if you're having it reviewed by somebody in a position of authority, you'd like to say, no, I validly do collect comments, I just don't add any new ones live to the site.
Anything you want to add on that, Blaine? Good?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to our next slide, which is guidance on the FTC's Clear Standards. Sarah, if you would be so kind to start us off on that.
Sure, and I just want to point out the bottom of this slide is a link to the actual guide from the FTC. All of these slides have already been sent out to the attendees, so you should already have access to these, but they're available through Affiliate Summit for, I think, 6 months or the next year. So you can download these slides, but at the bottom there's the link to it. It's a really great guide. I would highly recommend anybody doing this read this guide. They give very detailed examples of what it is that they think is okay and what's not okay. The FTC also has the new .com disclosures guide, which is another great guide to read, and I highly recommend it. Since the FTC is the one who's governing what you do, it's a good idea to know what they think about what you do. So we can go on to the next one. In looking at in deciding whether or not the appropriate disclosures are clear and conspicuous, these are the things that the FTC looks for. They call it the 4 Ps: prominence, presentation, placement, and proximity. Prominence, is it big enough for consumers to notice and read? Presentation, is wording and format easy for consumers to understand? Placement, is it where consumers will look? And proximity, is it close to the claim it qualifies? So what the FTC is looking at is just some very common sense things. Are your important disclosures big enough that the consumer can actually see it? If it's in small, tiny gray font at the bottom of the page, they're not actually going to see it. They're not going to read it. If you have to get a magnifying glass to be able to see it, no one's going to read it. Are you using wording or a format that makes it difficult for the consumer to read it? Are you using big words that nobody understands? Or is it hidden under something? A lot of times I'll see it hidden under the terms of like a continuity offer will be hidden under wording that says money back guarantee. That's kind of the popular one right now. And so the consumer won't read it because they think, oh, that's the money back guarantee. They don't bother looking at it. But what it really is about 2 sentences down. It says you're going to be rebilled $49.95 for the rest of your life. Also placement, where on the page is it? This is really important again with a mobile or other ways that a consumer is looking at your page, but it's even important on your landing page. Is it down below the fold of the page? The FTC specifically said in these guides that if your disclosures, if you have to scroll down to see your disclosures, then they're not clearly and conspicuously displayed. And is it close to the claim it qualifies? So as Aaron was saying, if you're using stock photos on your pages, then you should have a disclaimer that says this is a stock photo, not actual users. And that disclaimer should be right next to the photo, not hidden down at the very bottom of your page that you have to scroll down to, because if it is, the consumer is not going to see it. Looking a little more at prominence, the FTC wants your disclosures to be big enough that the consumer can actually read it. And not that they can read it, but that they actually will read it. And what they look at is the size big enough for the consumer to read it easily? Is there a sharp contrast between the disclosure and the background? Like I was saying, a lot of times you see the disclosures in gray font or yellow font, and you barely can read it. And like it says here, the test is not, is it readable, but rather, is it read? So what the FTC looks at is whether or not consumers are actually reading your disclosures, not whether they're there and it's possible they could read them, but whether they actually read them. For presentation, they look at whether it's easy for consumers to understand. Is it free of legal jargon? Does the format encourage careful reading? Does the font encourage careful reading? And is it free of distractions that compete for consumer attention? So a lot of times what I'll see is the important disclosures will be on the page, but right next to it, in giant, like bright red font, there will be and you get a free, whatever. You get a second one free. Or there's a really cool picture. There's something right next to it that draws the consumer's attention away from the important disclosures. And the FTC looks at that. They look at the page as a whole, and things like that where it's taking the consumer's attention away is going to distract from them reading and seeing the required disclosures. Placement, again, is it where the consumers will look? If you have to scroll down, or it's below the fold of the page, or it's somewhere hidden underneath something they're never going to see, it does not count as clear and conspicuous. And again, is it close to the claim that it qualifies?
Next slide, Aaron.
And I'll just say, I think it's important to note, like, we've done this ourselves. We've actually tested into, like, big disclosures and really at the top of your landing page. You can test into it. You know, it'll keep you compliant and it's totally worth it, but you can just run tests to like figure out what the best placement is for this to make it conspicuous and not hurt your conversion rate. It can be done for sure.
Yeah, and the FTC looks too at, they actually have done some studies on this. They did one last year at I think like 7 malls in the Midwest. They actually showed random like people at the mall 2 ads, and one said save up to 70%. and the other one said save 70%. And they had consumers look at these two ads, compare them, and then answer a series of questions. And what they determined was that the vast majority of the consumers didn't know the difference between the two. So where it said save up to 70% or it said save 70%, when they read either of those, they thought that you were going to save 70%. There was no difference to the consumer. So the FTC will actually take it that far. Well, they'll do tests like that. They're basically split testing to see if consumers are noticing a tiny disclaimer like that. And from that, what the FTC determined was that saying up to really wasn't much of a qualifier because consumers thought that they were going to save it either way, even with that disclaimer. So split testing is really a great way to check out where you're putting your disclosures, whether or not you're still going to convert, but whether the consumer is actually seeing those disclosures.
Before we move on to the next slide, are there any questions from the audience at all? Okay, then we'll move into this next one. So Aaron, just looking at this page that we have up on this slide, is this a compliant page?
It's got some issues. I'm kind of getting on my soapbox here and talk a little bit about some of the issues with this in the next couple of slides. Garcinia is kind of the new acai. And in my opinion, and I think they'll agree with me too, we're kind of back to where we were in 2009 with acai. While we don't have the massive upsells, the forced upsells, we do still see a lot of free trials being paired together, a lot of vlogs and using celebrities. We don't have the Rachel Ray, Oprah vlogs that are out there, but they're still pretty bad. And with the problem with a lot of the Garcinia offers that I see is I'm seeing, 2 trial offers paired that are $148 a piece that bill on day 3, where people's cards are going to get declined, massive chargebacks. At some point, somebody has to find the moral compass. And unlike 2009, now everybody with money and a pretty lander can become an advertiser. So it's getting worse. And I see pages like this that, they're trying. They don't have the checkbox that you would normally want to have on the page. Right above the Order Now button, normally you want to have a checkbox that's not checked that says, I agree to the terms and conditions and privacy policy. You can go one step further and even say, I agree to the terms and conditions as well as the free trial terms to the left. And on this page, you've got the 30-day money-back guarantee, and then below that are the actual terms. Now, the one big thing that's wrong with that is that it's not the same font size as the rest of the page. So anybody that would read this, the first thing they would see is 30-day money-back guarantee. Well, all that language underneath it must be about the 30-day money-back guarantee, so I'm not going to read that because it's just going to say whatever it normally says. Or if they actually read it and there was actually attention being drawn to it, they would see that they're going to get billed $79 on day, I think, 14. Under that, you've got 3 icons, the trust icons, the trustee, GeoTrust, and the SSL. I didn't click on any of those to see if they were real. Most of the time they're not. The total, the button where it says total of $495, technically, not technically, you should have something above that marks out the actual price that they're going to get billed, and it should alert the consumer that, hey, on day 14, you're actually going to get billed $79.95, and that's going to continue forever how long until you cancel or call and yell at us. So there are issues with this page. It's not completely terrible. It does need work, obviously, but it's not the worst one out there. I think the worst one out there is the next one. And this one isn't, again, I've seen a lot worse than this. This one you've got, and I apologize, actually don't apologize. If this is your page, come talk to me after this. The button on here where it says rush my order, again, it's giant, it's huge, and it's really, if you look at it, you've got the rush my order, you've got all these trust symbols, and then below that you've got the tiny little terms under there. And really what it's doing, and when most people don't have, they're not running 2048 by, 1280 resolution, they're not going to see that. All they're seeing is rush my order. Well, the whole point of this is to push those terms down. And again, they don't have a checkbox. And even below that, they've got the BBB symbol along with all these other trust icons. The whole point of this page is to build that confidence. Like, oh, we're not going to bill you any more than $295. We promise, unless you really read our terms, and we're really going to bill you, after 14 days, the $148. Again, 14 days, $148, it's not as bad as the 3-day $148 offers I've seen out there, but it's still pretty bad. And, again, it's kind of a sick cycle. And what I'm seeing is that good advertisers, they can't compete with the payouts with these bad advertisers. So a bad advertiser goes to the network and says, hey, I've got this offer for $148 a sale, and we'll pay out $65, and we're just going to keep running the traffic. And other advertisers can't compete with that. They've got offers that are compliant, but they can't match those payouts. And so the networks, though, they can't get affiliates that want to run these offers because the payouts aren't as high. So it's just a sick cycle. So the networks can't get the affiliates that want to run compliant offers, and the advertisers can't find a network to run their compliant offer. So again, it's just about the greed. And at the end of the day, I think that there's got to be another massive action. I mean, we're not that far off. Maybe not like it was with acai, but it's going to start with Visa, MasterCard, and shutting down merchant accounts, and the end of a lot of the trial offers that we see out there because it's getting abused. I'm seeing guys going out and getting 10, 11, 12 merchant accounts under fake names and fake companies, and at the end of the day, that's fraud too. I mean, that's bank fraud. That's jail. And you will go to jail for that. So if any of you guys are doing this out there, again, come talk to me after this, because there is a better way. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that you can stay compliant and still convert, but it just takes some effort to do it.
So our next slide, CJ, what would be okay with this page, and then what would be completely uncompliant with this page that we have now?
Well, at first glance of it, and obviously we don't know what the pre-land or what they got here, but the terms are there, as he mentioned earlier, and you see this a ton. People put the giant heading of look great guarantee or money back guarantee, and that's always the title they put. You're like, all right, that's great. And then the terms are invariably right underneath it. So this isn't horrible. The terms are there. They're on the same page. I don't know how this would look on mobile, but it's proximately close to the order now button. It's been kind of hammered already, but I'm a big believer in non-pre-check check boxes that say, hey, I read the terms and conditions and I agree to it. Whether they're actually going to read them or not, who knows, but if they at least have to do some little effort and click something and it won't let them continue unless they click it, I think that gives you some protection on the backside if somebody calls up and, from an FTC or AG's office and says, hey, we've had a lot of complaints about this. People are saying that they were charged without knowledge. What's this about? And it's nice to be able to point out and say, it says, I don't know how to make it clearer, basically, but I'll listen to reasoning on this. But I've told them, hey, I put it on the same page where they give their credit card. There's a checkbox. They checked the box. It wasn't pre-checked. It said, yes, I agree to it. I mean, I think that's, while it doesn't exactly take you completely out of the woods, it gives you at least a colorable claim that, hey, you're making an effort. You're trying to put these terms and conditions in front of people. You're not just going through the motions of listing out the terms and conditions in very tiny fonts somewhere buried on a page and crossing your fingers that no one ever looks over and sees it. And like I said, this one's kind of in the middle of the road. I mean, it's not, ideally would add checkbox, ideally look great guarantee would be replaced with free trial terms and conditions. And obviously a little bit larger font size since I can't even read it.
Is there anything wrong with putting dates in which you can expect shipments to arrive to kind of instill urgency in your users?
I think Sarah disagrees with me on that. I think that's generally okay. I mean, your shipment will arrive around January 7th, 2013. I think that's not the same as saying you have to place an order by a certain time or giving any sort of false scarcity. So I normally don't beat up clients over statements like that. A lot of them use it.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. The other thing on this is the terms are below the order now button, and in one of the FTC guides, they've specifically stated that your term should be above the submit button. Because on a lot of pages, and I think this was one of them, you actually have to scroll down as below the fold of the page. So if the order now or the submit button is higher than the terms, again, the consumer's not going to see it before they hit submit.
Okay. Shall we go into our next slide?
Yeah.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes left here. Are there any questions from the audience while we go into this next slide?
All right. We've been talking mainly about the FTC and the FTC's rules on clear and conspicuous disclosures. California also has a similar rule that we're just going to quickly touch on. The reason this is important is that your ads go to California. Even if you're not located in California or your affiliates aren't located in California, people in California are going to see your ads. And it specifically says it's unlawful for any business making an automatic renewal or continuous service offer to a consumer in this state to do any of the following. So this rule basically applies to everybody in the country. And California lays out some very clear rules on how they expect you to be disclosing it to your consumer. The first one is that you have to provide all of the terms of your continuity program before they hit submit. So before they make their purchase, you have to provide them. Second, you can't charge their card without obtaining their affirmative consent. And their affirmative consent would usually mean a checkbox. And third, you have to provide an acknowledgement after the sale of what they purchased, how much it's going to cost them, and how to cancel. And that's something that I don't really know a lot of people do, is provide an acknowledgement after the sale. You can go on to the next one. What California does that is helpful is they actually define what clear and conspicuous means. And they say clear and conspicuous means in a larger type than the surrounding text, or in contrasting type, font or color to the surrounding text, or set off by symbols or other marks in a manner that clearly calls attention to the language. So here they actually tell you, if you're so under the California rules, any of those disclosures that we just looked at where they were in like tiny font at the bottom violate the rules because they're smaller and they're hard to see. And here it specifically says that they have to be in a larger font or in a contrasting color, or set off by something that calls your attention to it. So if you're following this rule from California, you'd also be complying with the FTC rules. This just kind of gives them a little bit clearer of a standard for exactly what you need to do, which is make it bigger, make it bolder, make it brighter. And this does apply to everybody. So we're not seeing a lot of action from California on this right now, but this rule does apply to anyone who is advertising in California. So unless you're somehow geo-targeting California out, which I don't think anybody does, this rule is going to apply to you as well.
All right. Do we have any questions from the audience at all? I know we've been talking for a whole 50+ minutes, but any questions for our panel? Go up to the mic.
With respect to some of the international affiliates, whether they're located or based outside of the country, how enforceable are rules and guidelines that the FTC in certain states like California set forth? Is that problematic? And I guess what do you see moving forward with those that advertise from places like Europe or Morocco?
Well, the problem is there, obviously, if you're in Morocco, the FTC is not going to go after you unless you were stealing. If it's also involving some sort of theft, like you're stealing money from consumers as well, then possibly. If it's just that your ads are deceptive, I don't believe they're going to go to Morocco. But what they will do is they'll come knock on the advertiser's door, who's going to be in the US, or they're going to come knock on the network's door, who's running the ad. And that's what a lot of people don't realize is that everybody's just as liable. So if the advertiser sends down an ad that maybe the advertiser's in a different country, sure, they're in Europe. Network takes on their ad, it's for some skin care offer, and it's deceptive. And then affiliates are running that ad, and they're taking those advertising materials from the advertiser who gave it to the network, and they're running it. A lot of times affiliates just think, oh, I got it from the network, it must be fine. Or I got it directly from the advertiser, it must be fine. And the FTC says no, you're all liable for it. So the affiliate's liable for it because they're running it. The network's liable for it because they're the one providing it to them, and the advertiser's liable. So if the advertiser's in a different country, I think you'd even be worse off because the FTC is just going to come after the network and the affiliate then, because that's who they can easily get. So you're going to be stuck for a whole lot bigger a fine than if the advertiser, is local and the FTC can go after them as well.
Can you collect testimonials through your call center when they're talking with your customers? And if so, how can you do that by recording the call?
You can do it. In fact, it comes up a lot. The issue where it comes up is people will collect them and then they'll edit them down to just, because, you know, people talk to calls. I mean, they'll tell them about their dog, their cat, what the weather's doing. There's just usually a lot of excess kind of gibberish. But most call centers these days are recording calls anyways for, you know, quality or training purposes. It's completely acceptable. In fact, I encourage it with most people. The problem begins as soon as you kind of step down that path of editing it out, even though you're usually just doing it for clarity because you don't want to type out or have an audio testimonial that's 45 minutes and talks about everything under the sun. It's generally fine. If they say, I loved your product except for the part where it made my ears bleed all night, well, and then you just say, I loved your product and ended it, you're probably crossing over into misleading a little bit. But it's a great question because people do edit them, and I think a lot of advertisers use them with good faith that they're just trying to shrink down stuff. But as soon as you, one, don't have a copy of it in case anyone asks, or two, only take the good and not the bad, you start to tread in some little bit more dangerous ground.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? If you want to come to the mic.
I'll piggyback what he said as far as the testimonials. I like to use credible testimonials, so a lot of the times I don't just want like a customer, I want like someone that has really, that believes in a product, used it and offers it to their clients and what have you. So I may have a testimonial that will link directly to their website just in case someone wants to follow up on that testimonial. That person or the company's website is right there. Is that okay?
I think it's really okay. In fact, I'd encourage it. I think people run the risk if they think it's going to hurt their conversion because you're giving the visitor an excuse to go off site. But as long as the other person, you know,
It's just a hyperlink.
yeah, as if it's just a hyperlink, and presumably you've let them know, or they're happy about it, not just getting flooded with calls of did you really do this, or. But no, otherwise I think that's a great practice to follow.
Any other questions? Come on.
Just to piggyback on his question, and you were saying, you made the comment earlier about how it's harder for the affiliates and, I mean, it's harder for the advertising networks to find because you have to be so compliant. You mentioned greed, the competitiveness. Suppose you have, I'm just curious if you're seeing this a lot, situation, two affiliates, both are trying to reach the English-speaking USA market. One affiliate is based right in the USA, the other one is in a hard-to-reach country, I don't know, Morocco, Mexico, whatever, okay? Are you seeing a situation where the USA-based affiliate just can't compete with the guy offshore because he can kind of push the limits and you really can't because he's further away from the FTC?
From the affiliate side?
Yeah,
I
just from
see
the
that.
affiliate standpoint.
Yeah, I do see that.
Yeah, okay.
For the short term, though,
Yeah.
because in the
Yeah,
long
yeah.
term, the affiliates end up just getting cut and blacklisted across.
Yeah.
They're going to cut it off at a different source. Yeah, they can't reach that affiliate. He's somewhere else, thumbing his nose, waving, ha-ha. But he's buying banner traffic on Facebook. Facebook's subject to, you know, California rule. I mean, he's buying media on sites. Somehow he's getting the people there. So, yeah, he probably doesn't have criminal risk because nobody's going to go get him. But in terms of being able to continue doing it or really having a leg up of anything more than short term, I generally think they don't.
Are you seeing that, Blaine?
Yeah, I was going to say, and also,
Into the
you know, if
microphone.
you're working at a network or whatever, that really harms our relationship with our network partners. Definitely when someone approves someone from, you know, maybe a different country that wasn't really properly vetted and, you know, I don't know how much time they spent on it. And I'm like, okay, clearly as an advertiser, we really want to be able to hold our affiliates accountable if need be. I mean, you know, we're held accountable and we try to provide everything we can to our affiliates, but, you know, people that can't really be vetted, that, you know, are rebrokering and so on and so forth, that's just irresponsible and it just really hurts the overall relationship too.
The reason I was asking the question was like, it's sort of the perspective like, okay, I have to be compliant. Why should I run this offer when I can't even compete with the guy in Morocco who's able to say a lot of things or do crazy stuff that I can't do?
Yeah. Don't fall into that trap, though. This is it's a
Yeah.
race to the bottom right now, and I just just don't fall into that trap.
And the reality is you're going to be long-term and sustainable where they won't be. And, you know, from the advertiser side and when you're an affiliate picking offers as well, you also, I don't really think you can use the excuse that like, oh, an advertiser actually, that every advertiser is a good advertiser. You know, I've had plenty of situations where we've competed against other offers that I can't compete with as an advertiser because we're legitimate and we're, you know, buying data and all that kind of stuff, and our product has a cost, and then, you know, someone else that doesn't have a cost and it's really a scam, you know, they'll eventually though be gone in 3 months, 6 months, a year. I just wait it out because they're gonna be gone and we'll still be around. So it's all about long-term sustainability, not the short term.
How about the little guys, little affiliate guys that don't have representation like you guys to help them pick offers that are compliant and get a bunch of offers from networks that we see them all the time that are not compliant? Who protects those guys?
Well, I think in that case, you know, if you're an affiliate, obviously not everybody's big enough, like you're saying, to have, you know, a lawyer looking over all of their ads. It's important to run with networks that you trust, that you know they have a legal that's doing this. They have someone who's looking over the offers. They have a compliance team, and they're actually compliant. That helps a lot. But it's also just using common sense. I mean, claiming, you know, that you're stupid and just didn't notice that the ad was bad isn't going to get you anywhere. You know, the stuff that we're pointing out where the terms aren't even on the page, or they're in such tiny font no one's going to see it, or, you know, it's making some claim that you're going to lose 10 pounds a day from taking this diet product. Like, use common sense. You know, actually look at the ads that you decide to run. Don't just look at, you know, how much money you're going to make off of them, but also what is actually the content of the ads that you're sending, because there is no excuse for not knowing the rules. And you can also read the rules. The FTC has great guides, like the couple that we pointed out, and a whole host of other ones. Take the time to actually read, do your homework, and know what you're sending.
Any other questions before we wrap up?
Yeah. Does all this stuff go for email as well? I mean, it seems like it could go for email because I do a lot of email marketing, and it seems like, you know, if I'm not running ads and the FTC can see my ads, if I'm doing it through email or let's just say mobile SMS messages, whatever, does all this stuff apply? I mean,
Yes, it applies. So the FTC rules on false advertising apply to any form of advertising, whether it's email, it's banner ads, it's print as well. I mean, if you're getting, you know, ads into your actual mailbox, it applies across the board. It applies to billboards, to television ads. There's no difference. So it doesn't matter what medium you're sending out your ads in, these rules still apply. And if anything, they apply more to email because you have a lot more space in your email. A banner ad, you're gonna have a tiny little thing. There's not a whole lot to put in there. But in your emails, I mean, you've got plenty of space to put all kinds of non-compliant things. So these rules definitely apply to email.
and then I want to piggyback on what you said, because, yeah, it's true. I mean, the little guys, per se, may not have like an attorney that they can hire just to specifically look at all the stuff that's going on. So is this some type of service out there where, you know, it's a nice moderate fee where, you know, before I send out these offers or these emails, can someone, I wouldn't pay for something like that. I do have a legal background, but I'm not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV, so it's like.
Well, I mean, I'll say, like, we offer our assistance constantly to our affiliates and our networks, and all of our networks are really lawyered up. I mean, if you're running with there's great people in this space, and we have teams of lawyers that are constantly looking. I mean, a lot of what we do is we're constantly deciding what is and is not okay, and we're, you know, providing those as approved creative. So you can always ask, and if you're working with a good network partner, their lawyers will even like come talk to our lawyers, and, you know, we'll just sit and talk about it for a long time and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on your behalf. You know, you don't really, you know, necessarily have to do that. So, you know, you definitely utilize those. And I think that's really important for affiliates to, you know, actually utilize the resources that are there, because as an advertiser in the space, we want you guys running compliant creative, and we're willing to spend that extra money to do that.
right, that's going to wrap our session. Thank you everyone for attending. Our panelists are going to be sticking around for a few more minutes if you have any other questions that you would like to come up and ask them. Thank you so much for attending and enjoy the rest of Affiliate Summit.